system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally, and we do that by buying treasury bills. That actually increases the money supply.
Financial Turmoil Explained.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good day, and welcome to the Delta Report on this Thursday, the 1st of September, 2022. I'm going to lay it out for you guys. Back a couple years ago, a trade war was started with China. And there's never been a real ceasefire to the whole thing, you know? And the thing about it is how does this apply to the economic system we have now? What really is going on, you know? Well, Russia and China, you guys all know, Russia and China is pretty much together, and so is Iran, and a number of other countries known as the BRICS. Well, this all goes back to the petrodollar. Petrodollar was initiated by Kissinger and President Nixon when they took the United States off of the gold standard in 1971, and they arranged the petrodollar. And they worked in union with the Saudi Arabians and the amount of oil they had. And they linked oil to the dollar, so you needed dollars in order to buy oil. And this petrodollar stayed in place for a long time, and it had what I would refer to as a soft peg between the dollar and oil. And this is what gave the dollar its value. All the other Western currencies were thereby linked to the dollar, and they obtained their value through the dollar. So, in other words, if you were, say, in Japan, you had yen, or if you were in Swiss francs, or it didn't really matter, Canadian dollars, Great British pounds, they were all connected to the dollar, and they were worth so many dollars in the overnight markets, the foreign exchange markets. So this was a system that they had in place by which the dollar obtained its value from oil, and the other currencies of the West that were linked to the dollar obtained their value from the dollar. And, you know, the dollar, this seemingly worked pretty good for a long period of time. Since 1971 until now. But, you know, since this trade war has been established, the countries in the East, the eastern side, have become very aggressive in their policies to weaken the structure of the petrodollar. And they're trading oil and energy products. And, you know, since the war in Ukraine has started, along with this trade war, this has got a lot worse really fast. And now Russia controls the gas products heading into Europe. So basically what's happening is for the longest time, because the U.S. dollar was the world reserve currency, it was King Dollar. That's what they actually called it. Like during the Reagan years and stuff. Well, for the longest time, this did work. But what's happening right now is because this is being eroded, this petrodollar standard is being eroded. What it's doing is it's taken away from the ability that the United States had, because they were the world reserve currency, in order to basically print as much money as they wanted and basically use that money to buy whatever in the world they wanted from any country on earth. It gave them enormous power, and it gave us enormous power over here in the West to live lifestyles beyond our means and borrow into the future, borrow from generations into the future. But all of this has come at a price. And because the Eastern countries basically want to take us down a notch, or 2, or 5, or 10 notches, they're working hard to erode the petrodollar. During the COVID crisis, and from 2008 up till 2022, up until this year, we've been living the high life, expanding our credit, and inflation started to rear its ugly head in a big way. because of this and because of what's being done by the East to erode the dollar. What would be the eventual cost of this is what the East wants. The East is looking at us and they're saying, hey, you know what? They're in their most vulnerable position in this trade war, and actually what is actually now with Russia moving into Ukraine is actually Russia has boots on the ground in Ukraine, so it's actually a hot war in Ukraine, but a proxy war for the West because they're sending weapons to Ukraine. So the situation that we have right now has evolved into a situation where the West is in a do-or-die situation with the Fed right now. They cannot let this inflation get out of control. The East is rubbing their hands together and they're saying, oh boy, if inflation gets out of control in the West, we got them where we want them. They're saying to themselves. That's what the East is saying to themselves. If inflation gets out of control in the West and they all go into a hyperinflation, all of the currencies will go down with the dollar. And they're like, hey, you know what? Yeah. It's just like, yeah, we can get them right where we want them. And so they're kind of being forced now at this point to maintain the power and the strength of the dollar as the world reserve currency. They sort of have to raise interest rates. They sort of have to drain liquidity out of the system through quantitative tightening right now. Because if they back off right now, the dollar's going to lose value so fast that, yeah, we very possibly will go into a hyperinflation. So this is a very strained situation for the West. It's not like they want to have the market suffer pain, and all of the people in the West suffer pain. But on the other side of this coin, if they just let it go, and they willy-nilly print money now, why, we're going to experience inflation like you've never saw before. And that inflation could get out of control and lead to a hyperinflation where our currencies are valueless in the West. And the East knows this. So this is a do-or-die situation. And we say, and you've heard us say, on not just my channel, but on numerous other channels, that the system is unstable and that the currency could go into what's called a hyperinflation. And so what we're going to talk about just for a minute is what is a hyperinflation? And what happens? What's the impact on you and everybody else if the dollar were to go into a hyperinflation? And what would be the impact on the other countries of the West if a hyperinflation were to occur to the dollar? Well, because all these other Western currencies are pegged to the dollar, they would go into a hyperinflation as well, including the dollar. And basically what a hyperinflation is when your money starts to lose value and the people start to lose confidence in the purchasing power of their dollars. What that means is, it means that if you go to the store and you see that apples are $2 a pound this month, and you go in a week later and you see that apples are $3 a pound, or you say to yourself, hey, you know what? I better go out and buy some of those apples because the price is going up so fast and my dollar's purchasing power is going down. If you see everything else across the board going up in price the same way, after a while, and after this occurs for a while, it gets ingrained in your psyche, just in the way you think, that costs are going to continue to rise rather rapidly. And so what happens is, as you start to get your money and you see costs rising, you decide not to save it. You decide to spend it as fast as you can spend it. That attitude spreads from person to person. Everybody starts to think the same way. Spend my money as fast as I get it. This is what leads to hyperinflation, because prices then start to rise even faster. And then that mentality gets even stronger, where people say, hey, I got to spend my money as fast as I get it. There's some $20 trillion in savings in the United States of America alone. Can you imagine if people have the mentality, spend my money as fast as I get it, how that will raise prices on everything? So, we know that that's not the mentality that's out there right now. It was starting to drift in that direction. Through the actions of the Federal Reserve, people's attitudes now is starting to change, and change very, very quickly into a different attitude. An attitude, hey, there's a recession coming. I better save my money. I better not spend that. I better not buy that this week. People start to think in the opposite way. They start to think, hey, perhaps I better save my dollars because hard times might be coming. This is the opposite. This is called deflation. And you see, the monetary system is not set in stone that it has to always be inflation. It can switch from inflation to deflation and then back to inflation again. This makes it extremely hard to predict. But through macroeconomics, which basically means that the difference between micro and macro, you've all heard of a microscope. It looks at small things, very small things. But when you look through a telescope, that's the macro. Large things, like the universe, is macro. Micro is something that's extremely small. So a macroeconomist, they're not focused on the small little minutiae or details like if any one particular market. There's certain people who specialize in different particular markets. Okay? The one person might specialize in money markets, or another person might specialize in certain types of equities, or certain types of money products, or wealth management products, etc. Money managers and things like that specialize in certain areas of the market. That is more of a micro scale or small scale. They're right down in there in the pits, in the money pits, looking at what prices are moving on any particular item from day to day. That's the smaller detail. But the macroeconomist steps back from that, and they look at long-term trends in the world's markets, and they also they have a way of figuring what's going to happen next, because it's a general. It's like, let me explain it to you this way. It's like a person looks at a painting. Stand too close to a painting and you can't see what you're looking at. You stand back a ways from a painting and you can start to see the real picture. And this is what a macroeconomist does, is they stand back away. Me, what I do on this channel is more like macroeconomics, but with geopolitics added in. So I am a forecaster. I am a trends forecaster, economic trends forecaster, and world trends. I see a decaying system here, and I've been following the Fed for a long time. And what I'm trying to tell you guys in this particular show is that the Fed Reserve is not doing this and causing this pain out there because they really want to. But they're engaged in an act of survival at this point, survival of the monetary system. Because if we go through a hyperinflation, you have no idea how destructive that would be to our way of life here in the West. But at this stage in the game, it's almost impossible to try to actually stop this train that's coming of inflation. And the Federal Reserve right now is throwing themselves in front of this train, trying to stop it. But it's like a mosquito throwing themselves on the railway track to try to stop the train that's coming. And in the East, they are giving the train the gas. They're wanting it to mow us over. You know? And so the Eastern, what we have is we have a great divide now in the world. It wasn't so much there a few years back, when we had more global trade and everybody was getting rich and fat and happy. Now it's exactly the opposite. Things have turned sour all around the world. Things have turned sour, and not just the West, but the East as well. And they're all engaged in a economic warfare. And it's a race to the bottom with these currencies. It's also a race to see what country can maintain their citizens and keep them the happiest and have them not revolt. And whoever survives this the longest is basically the winner, I suppose. But they're putting, all the countries of Earth are putting their citizenry through a tremendous amount of pressure and pain during this period in time that we're in right now. And I'm going to tell you guys what, it's a very difficult period in time right now. It's very dangerous because of world events that are going on. And I'm trying to stay on top of them on this channel. I see things like what happened yesterday with the Pope moving the church's money into the Vatican bank rather than leaving it in the regular legacy financial system. And this is a signal to me, hey, you know what? This is very dangerous, what's happening right now. The markets are on edge because the Fed is pushing it to the point where, yes, we're going to have the pain very, very soon in the markets. And there could be some sort of a deleveraging event that could occur very suddenly within the markets. Not unlike the 2008 event, but this time they might not be able to support the markets as good as they did in 2008. And we might start to topple toward the edge of the abyss. And of course, the Eastern world's like, we got our car and we're driving it over the edge of the abyss, and they want to give us a push to have us go down the cliff and have the dollar burn and have the dollar become valueless, you know. And what would replace the dollar as a world reserve currency? I just don't know yet, but I can see that they're looking, the eastern side of the world is looking and saying, hey, you know what? Goodbye dollar and good riddance. Burn, baby, burn. You know? Where the Western world, you cannot imagine what your lifestyle will be like if that were to happen. And so, I don't know what to tell you guys about all this. I'm not trying to make the Fed out to look to be any sort of a hero or anything like that. But at the same time, we are engaged because the Fed, as far as I'm concerned, is an evil entity. Because they're the ones who structured and took us off the gold standard. Nixon come along, he said, okay, we're taking America off of the gold standard, and it's going to be temporary. He said temporary. This has not been temporary by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's going on, what, since 1971? What's that, 50 years? 51, is that 51 years? Something like that. Been a very long period of time. It's certainly not temporary. Well, okay, maybe we could say temporary if we talk about the history of the universe. But at any rate, this is a very tricky time in world history right now, where there is a potential threat of global war, which is a very real potential threat. One of the things that the people that are in charge, you know, are almost maniacal at this point in time, trying to, they're in a fight for survival, and the people just the regular people like us, we're in a fight for survival because we're being drained. All of our liquidity is being drained. I mean, we look back like 5 years ago and we say, oh my goodness, how rich we were compared to how we are now and how we're struggling now to survive. It's not fair. This is part of an archaic system that's come from ancient times when kings used to rule the world, and they had countries, and they had the treasuries, you know, and they ruled the world with gold, and they started brutal wars at their say-so, and effectively we haven't really moved forward into the type of system that we need. We need a system where reason and common sense and rule of law prevails. We have the electronic means now of technology to maintain a system that's structured in a way where every citizen would be able to uh, be happy. But we're still being run in this archaic way that came down from the ages. That is how a planet would be run if it was like if it had kingdoms and rulers that the way it was when the kings ruled the earth. But the governments are just as just as maniacal as a dictator or a oh, what's the word I'm looking for. We need to get past this moment in history and move to something where logic and common sense and we can use technology to our advantage to help to have a brighter future rather than what we have with these maniacal rulers who are out for their own gain. The system has gotten too corrupt at this point, and there's no clear-cut answers, but how to get out of this. But on the other side of this coin, I can see we're coming into a period in time where there's going to be tremendous trouble. And there's tremendous trouble brewing right now. And listen, guys, I'm telling you that we're on the edge. We're on the edge of the precipice right now, as far as the financial system is concerned. Because you all know that the Fed's trapped. And soon, they're going to be faced with some hard choices. The markets are going to roll over. All the markets are going to fall. They're going to start to collapse. And the Fed's going to have to say, hey, do we give in to this? And do we support the markets? And if we do, the East wins. Because we will go into a hyperinflation. Make no doubt about it. Or do we hold the line? And do we continue to tighten and have the markets completely crash and have our system go into a tremendous deflation, not unlike 1930s, but maybe even a lot worse? What do we do? They're going to be faced with that question. And the people are going to be angry because no matter how you cut it, they're going to blame the ones who are in charge for the failure of the system. Either way they cut it, the system's going to fail. My way of thinking is, yeah, all these people in charge, they all probably deserve what's coming. But we don't deserve it. We the people don't deserve it. We never asked for it. All around the world, we don't deserve any of this. We just want to survive, have a world we can raise our kids in, and be safe and secure, and have security, real security. Whenever we look to an outside source for security, like the governments and stuff, what do? They cheat us, they rob us, and they use that want or lust that we have as people for security as a tool against us, to put in their maniacal rules, endless rules, so that they can not only maintain power, but basically take all of our resources, take all of our wealth, take all of everything that we have, and create a dystopian type world or society. And this is because they are a bunch of psychopaths that are in charge, and they're greedy, and they just want power and money. Answers are not going to be easy to find. And all of this is going to start really soon, and things are going to be bad, really bad. And, the people at some point are going to say, hey, you know what, we've had enough of this. What do we do? What do we do to get out of this? Because the leaders are not offering us any solutions. Okay, I've rambled on for a little while. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.